Today we're going to talk about law of sines and law of cosines. In particular, we're going to focus in on law of sines. But when we're using the law of sines and law of cosines, we are solving oblique triangles. And what that means, it means it's simply not a right triangle. So if I have, let's say, an acute triangle, so that means all my angles are acute. When we label our triangle, the capital letters, so A, B, C, capital letters, are going to be my angles. And it does not matter where you put those angles. Across from angle A should be little a. Across from angle B should be little b. Across from C should be little c. You're going to do the same thing if I had an obtuse triangle. So same thing, it does not matter where you put A, B, and C, but your sides have to match up. So little a has to be across from angle A, little b across from B, and C across from C. Now for these problems, we're going to be given 4 cases. Our first case is called our side-side angle case. Our second case is when we're given 2 angles. So it's either an angle-side angle or an angle side. Our third case is when we're given a side angle side, and then our last case is when we're given side side side. Now for our first 2 cases, we're going to use the law of sines. For your last 2 cases, you're going to use the law of cosines. Like I said earlier, we're going to focus in on the law of sines. So what does the law of sines say? Well, the law of sines says that you can take the sine of A over little a and set it equal to the sine of B over little b equals to the sine of C over little c. So it's saying all 3 proportions equal one another. Or you can basically take the reciprocal of all 3 proportions. So you can have little a over sine A equal B over the sine of B equals C over the sine of C. So the only thing here is I would pick one of these versions and stick with it. I primarily use this top one, but really it does not matter. You're going to get the same outcome. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to use the law of sines for our first 2 cases. So when we're given a side-side angle, or we're given 2 angles, so it's an angle-side angle or angle side. An easier way to determine that you're going to use the law of sines is that you're going to look at your given information, and if you're given a pair, which means you're given a corresponding side and angle, that's going to tell you you're going to use the law of sines. So if I'm given both my A's, or both my B's, or both my C's, I know I'm going to use law of sines. Alright, let's take a look at our first example. Notice again, we're given both my A values. So right away I know I can use the law of sines. So if I use the law of sines, you're going to set up a proportion. But before we get into using the law of sines, notice I'm given 2 angles. And I can go ahead and find my third angle because I know all my angles in a triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. So to find B, I'm just going to take 180 minus 110 minus 33. So when I do that, I'm getting angle B to be 37 degrees. So right away, I know angle B is 37 degrees. Now I can go ahead and find little b and little c. It does not matter which one you solve for first. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and solve for little b first. So if I solve for little b first, you're going to set up your proportion. So you're going to have the sine of 110 over 7 equals the sine. Since I'm solving for b, that means I need to use angle b. So I'm going to use 37 over little b. Now to solve these proportions, all you're going to do is cross multiply. So if I cross multiply, I'm going to get b times the sine of 110 equals 7 times the sine of 37. Now to get b by itself, you simply divide both sides by sine of 110. And this is what you're going to get. When you get to this point, you're going to type it in your calculator just like you see it there. And when you enter that in your calculator, you should be getting approximately 4.5. So little b is 4.5. Now, some people might say, well, now we can just use the Pythagorean theorem because we have two sides. The Pythagorean theorem is not going to work in this case because it's not a right triangle. So again, you have to go back and use the law of sines. So I'm still going to use the sine of 110 over 7. You still use your given information. And this time, since I'm solving for C, I'm going to use angle C. Now you're going to go ahead and cross multiply. So I'm going to get C times the sine of 110 equals 7 times the sine of 33, and then divide both sides by the sine of 110. And again, type that in your calculator, and please type it in because I want to make sure you're getting the right outcome. So when you type that in, you should be getting approximately 4.1. So my answer is 4.1. Now notice your smallest angle and smallest side should be across from one another. Your largest angle and largest side should be also be across from one another. So everything looks right. We're done. Alright, we are going to actually skip example 2. I'm going to go over this example in class. It's kind of a lengthy example, so instead of having the video be super long, we'll just go over this problem in class. Alright, notice on this example again, we're given a pair, so I'm given both my a values. So in this case, I'm only given one angle, so we can't find my third angle. The only thing you can solve for in this case is angle B, because that's the only other side I'm given. So if I go ahead and solve for B first, I'm going to set up my proportion. So I'm going to have the sine of 122 over 23 equals the sine of B over 11. So I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. So I'm going to get 23 sine B equals 11 sine 122. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 23. Now when you do this, you get approximately 0.4055. Now we're solving for an angle in this case, and remember, if we're solving for an angle, we have to use the inverse function. So to get b by itself, you're going to do second sine of 0.4055. And when you do that, you should get approximately 24 degrees. So b is going to be approximately 24 degrees. Now we can go ahead and find c, because now we have two angles. So to get c, I'm just going to take 180 minus 122 minus 24. And when you do that, you're going to get 34 degrees. Now we have to find little c. Remember, you cannot use the Pythagorean theorem. So again, we're going to set up the proportion. So we're going to do sine of 122 over 23. I'm going to use angle C, which I found to be 34 degrees over little c. Again, go ahead and cross multiply. And then we're going to divide by the sine of 122. And now we're ready to type all that in our calculator. So if we type it in our calculator, we should be getting approximately 15.2. So little c is approximately 15.2. Again, double check my smallest angle and smallest side are across from one another. My largest angle and largest side are also across from one another. All right, this is going to be our last example, and then we'll go through some more problems in class to kind of check your understanding. So again, notice I'm given a pair. So in this case, I'm given both my b values. So I know I can use law signs. Again, I'm only given one angle, so I need to go ahead and find angle C because that's the side I was given. So I'm going to set up my proportion. So I'm going to say sine of 107 over 6 equals the sine of C over 8. Again, we're going to cross multiply. So I'm going to get 6 sine C equals 8 sine 107, and then divide by 6. Now when we enter that in our calculator, I'm going to go up top. When we enter that in your calculator, you're going to get the sine of C equals approximately, I believe it's 1.2751. Remember, we're still solving for an angle, so we have to do second sine of 2.751. And when we do that, you should be getting an error message. It'll say error. What this means is it means the sine function does not exist for this value. So that means there is no solution. And notice, the reason this is true is because in order for this triangle to work out, C had to be the largest angle since it's across from the largest side. And in this case, that would not be true. Again, please make note, if you had any questions, please write them down so that way we can go over them in class. And we will continue on with the law of cosines in class as well.